To end today's show with the countdown to a big moment for mankind, NASA heading back to the moon. Monday morning, Artemis 1 is scheduled to launch. This first mission is unmanned, but it paves the way for humans to eventually return to the moon and then years from now even set foot on Mars. A lot has to happen between now and then, but this is a very big first step. And so, all eyes right now are on Kennedy Space Center in Florida. This is a live look with the Artemis 1 rocket already in position. It will be a historic mission, and to help us understand tonight, we have a guest who's made some history of her own. Joining us now is Holly Ridings, the Deputy Program Manager for Gateway, which is this bigger mission to the moon. She is also the first female chief of NASA's flight directors. It is a real pleasure to have you on the air here. When most people think of going to the moon, they think back to Apollo about 50 years ago. Many of us weren't even alive back then. Now we have Artemis and all of this excitement. As we count down to Monday's liftoff, I wonder if we could just start with that topic and how this mission is different from what last happened 5 decades ago.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much for having me. You used the word excitement, and I completely agree. We are tremendously excited, as is the whole world. So if you want to talk a little bit about, the differences, I think about it really in terms of an evolution, right? So we landed on the moon many years ago, and we've learned a lot about human spaceflight, about the United States of America and how we come together in order to do great things, and our global leadership. So from a really big picture standpoint, this is really just an evolution, the next step. We left off, and as you mentioned, many of us were not alive, and so both from that standpoint and in our professional careers, this is an opportunity for us to really move forward and do something amazing for the world. So we're tremendously excited about it.
This first part of the bigger mission is unmanned, right? But eventually the goal is to have humans back in our spaceships and going back to the moon. Walk us through kind of that timeline and how this first part of the mission kind of sets you up for what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, so typically when you build new human-rated spacecraft, which again, we've been lucky enough to do with Orion, which right now sits atop our SLS out at the launch pad, you usually fly them without crew the first time, right? It's to test out their systems, big things like, does your structure, do what it's supposed to? Does your heat shield work when you re-enter the Earth's atmosphere after coming back from the moon? Power systems, thermal systems, really the core technical things that will keep our crew safe and alive as they head to the moon. So that's this first mission. The next mission, Artemis 2, will put our crew inside Orion now that we've checked it out and understood it, and send them around the moon. The mission following that, we should be able to have our lander ready and put our crew in the lander and head down to the surface of the moon. After that, we'll have our Gateway space station in orbit around the moon ready for our crew members, as well as starting to consider what's going to be down permanently on the surface. So, uncrewed crew around the moon, crew to the surface, and then permanent lunar presence with our space station and continuing missions down to the surface, and then permanent presence down on the surface. Those are kind of the big picture bullets from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, and doing it one step at a time, right? And this first one is a very big step. Bigger picture, we just talked about we haven't been to the moon in some 50 years. And some people say, why do we need to do that again? Walk us through why it's important that we tackle this project and do something that we haven't done in a long time.
Yeah, so there's lots of reasons, right? The first one we'll talk about from a technical standpoint. We've learned a lot in terms of technical capabilities. We've learned a lot about global leadership. We've learned a lot about, domestic technology. And so this time, really, if you think about the partnerships just domestically, in terms of all of the companies, the money that's spent around the country, the different technology and assets that we are able to, work on as a nation. And then our partnerships, with our international team all over the world, those are of tremendous value, along with, building up our technical capabilities. And then if you just think about, us as a human race wanting to explore and really push ourselves to do better and to understand what's out there, permanent foothold, lunar permanence is a term that's used. There's a human aspect of exploration where we'll go to the moon and stay this time permanently and then on to Mars.
Lunar permanence. I haven't heard that phrase yet, but I love it.
Lunar permanence.
Holly Ridings is the Deputy Program Manager for the Gateway program and also the first female chief of NASA's flight directors. Real pleasure again to have you on. I know it's going to be a crazy few days as we count down to liftoff on Monday. Thanks for taking some time for us.
All right, please watch Monday morning. We'll be excited. Thank you very much for having me.